Hello and welcome back to High Frontier. This is Game 3, Part 5 on the Race for Glory, the Mars tutorial. We left last. We are in year number 19 now. We're starting off. We left with a felonious action that occurred, the first felony ever to occur on Mars, possibly in space, occurred when the Taikonauts took over the NASA claim to the glacier and basically took it for themselves. So now they're on Mars. They have a crew there. They have their crew. They also have a thruster there, but they don't have a robonaut and they don't have a refinery, so they cannot build a factory. They also don't have much fuel left. But what they do have is they're on a site that actually has some water. So you can see there's 4 droplets of water there. And what they want to do is they want to get some of that water so that they can put it into their rocket and use it for propellant or fuel. So what they're going to do is they're going to do a site refuel operation. It's really good when you have a factory there. If a factory is there, then it will generate 7 fuel tanks of water per operation. That is really good. But without a factory, it's not very good at all. It really depends on what your ISRU level is on your craft that is there, whether it be a robonaut or whether it be your crew or whatever. Basically, anything at this top left section is the ISRU value. And again, the ISRU is what you do when you live off the land. And we talked about how much they actually have to excavate in order to even just live there. So the calculation goes like this. The ISRU value is basically deducted from the number of water droplets, and then you add 1. So 4 water droplets minus 4 ISRU value, which is not very efficient, plus 1 only gives 1 fuel tank of water. But that's what they're going to do, because they need more fuel in order to get back home, to get that glory chit back home for an extra point. So we'll take a look at their playmat here, and we will see what that does. So getting down even closer onto their playmat, you can see that what we're going to do is we're going to move it 1 fuel tank basically to the right. And we use the red dotted line right there. So we're going to move it 1 to the right, just like that. So that bought them another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 burns, or not 6 burns, sorry, 6 fuel stops, 6 stops. So they have their thruster there that's on Mars, and it uses 4. The crew uses 9. They're going to have to take off from Mars, obviously, because there's no factory there. So they're going to take off, most likely using their crew that's back on the rocket stack, and they're going to take 9 burns just for that. So if we take a look and see how many burns that would be 1, or how many stops that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they can get off the planet with 9, and then if they use their other thruster, they're going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So they only have 1 burn remaining after that. And that's not going to get them home. So they're going to need a lot more water to get there. And they don't have another rocket. They don't even have anything in Leo, and they actually don't have any cards. So it's not like they can take some water there in a as cargo and provide it to that rocket. So they're going to be stuck out there, I think, for a long time. That's just my guess. I did not look ahead, so I don't know, but that's what I'm thinking is going to happen if I understand this game correctly. And I think that I'm beginning to understand this game pretty good, and I hope you are too. So they added the fuel during a site refuel operation. They're not able to move, so that really, well, they can move, but they're going to get stuck out there, and that's not going to be good. So they're just gonna stay there. So we're at the NASA, and NASA is going to go ahead and auction the electroforming refinery, which is right here, the electroforming refinery, and they're going to get it for free. They bid zero. Nobody else wanted it, so they got it for free, and it's into their hand. They have 3 cards in their hand now. All right, the ESA, they auctioned off the monatomic plug nozzle thruster. This one here, and they got it for free. Nobody else wanted it. Now their hand size is 4. So they're maxed out on the auction. They can't auction anymore. So they're either going to need to boost it to LEO or they're going to need to sell one. All right. So that is the end of year number 19. That was pretty quick. So let's go to year number 20. The Taikonauts. Well, guess what they're going to do? That's right. They're going to perform another site refuel operation. They're going to put another step of wet mass. So now we're going to go ahead and move that wet mass again, one step to the right across their dotted red line. And now let's see how many they've got. In order to take off, they need 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So they have enough fuel. I guess it didn't take as long as I thought, because down there, each stop is very, very small. They're using very, very small amount of propellant. So that's pretty good because it's so light. That craft is really, really light. So they did a site refuel. And now we're going to go ahead and move back over to Mars. There we go. Got a nice, good view there of Mars and their rocket sitting on their claimed site that they stole. So they're going to go ahead and they're going to do a powered liftoff from a size 10 site. And their rocket has a crew thrust here of 14. However, it is a probe. So again, they are a thrust of 15, and 15 is greater than 10, which is on the site here. It's a 10. So they need more than 10 thrust in order to take off, and they're able to do so. So they take off, and they're able to get off that planet, which is very good. So they launch off of Mars, and the rocket burns at the lander burn. And so we're going to drop the wet mass down by 9. This is the lander. We can't stop there. Remember that. Can't stop there, because you go up and now you're just going to fall back down and crash back down. And that's not good. So you don't want to do that. So they were able to get off. We're going to drop the play mat by 9. I know you're not able to see this, but just trust me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That brings it to 2 and 2 1/3. So we're at 2 1/3. And let's see here. And then we're going to go ahead and go up to the Mars low orbit, the low Mars orbit, the LMO, so that the next turn, the person is going to be able to switch their thrust to the other thruster to only use 4 per burn. And we're going to need 3 burns to get home, I believe. All right, so we're back. We're back on the rocket stack, and they're able to switch their engine or their thruster next turn. A couple of tips that they say here. So they talk about dirt-filled rockets, but we haven't encountered any of those cards yet. So there's no dirt going on yet in this game, but dirt can be used as fuel for certain rockets, certain thrusters. I keep on saying rockets, but I mean, it's a thruster. It's a component of the rocket. So dirt can be used, and dirt is everywhere. So basically, when you do a site refuel with a dirt rocket, you refuel your tank as much as you possibly want, all the way to the top if you want. Of course, it makes it a lot heavier when you go all the way to the top, but if you wish, you can. The max dry mass is actually listed on the play mats, and it's different than the wet mass. You can see here it's 23, and the wet mass is all the way up to 32. So you can fill your rocket with a lot of dirt if you have a dirt thruster. And it says that it's the hydration doesn't matter on the site because it's dirt. So low mass rockets are quicker to refuel en route because they get multiple fuel steps per aqua of fuel while their wet mass remains low. So it says we are adding fuel in this example, but if you ever had to subtract whole units of mass from a rocket, always adjust the mass along the red line. If presented with a choice, use the lower. So that's just FYI. You can use the interval method to calculate, and we didn't have to do that here because we already knew what it took to get back, but you can use that interval in order to calculate how many burns you have in order to get there. And it says ant lion traps. It's a mistake to think that you can lift off from any site you can land on. The additional fuel needed for the return trip may increase the rocket's weight class modifier to the point where you have insufficient thrust. You can often avoid paying for a return trip by decommissioning your thruster and boosting it again. However, that's going to strand your crew if you have a crew out there. So those are just tips that they want everybody to know about. It says also on sites of size 6 or smaller, a factory can provide an assist to the rocket's launch, with some risks represented by the need to make a hazard roll. Keep this in mind when thinking about whether or not to land on a rocket with a low thrust on a site. So you have a factory assist possibility, but you could also blow up by using that factory. All right. So NASA is up, their turn, and they have really kind of one last shot at winning the game, and that's get back to Mars and build a factory. So in order to do that, the player boosts the thruster into LEO in order to get it up there along with their crew and a refinery. So they have their thruster here. And this one has a 5 mass. Like we said, this is a very efficient thruster. So they boost it up to LEO. It costs them 5 aqua to do that because 5 mass costs 5. But they get 1 back. So they net out with 1 aqua remaining. But they do have a rocket up there, or a thruster up there. I keep on saying rocket. It's not in the rocket stack, Kevin. It's in the LEO. It's in LEO. All right. So we have a thruster, we have a crew, and we have a refinery sitting up in LEO. All right. The ESA is up next, and the ESA, as you can see, has tons of aqua. They're also going to go out and try to stake a claim and build a factory as the only way to win. And to do that, they have to get to Mars, and they have to convince the Taikonauts to lend her their faction privilege in order to commit a felony and steal NASA's claim. So they're going to do the exact same strategy as they tried the first time, but this time they're hoping for a better result. So what they're going to do is they're going to boost up their Robonaut and their refinery. And the refinery is the chlorocarbonization, and the carbochlorination refinery, and the nuclear drill. Not the tungsten, but the nuclear drill. So they're going to boost those two up for 5 aqua up into low Earth orbit. And that's going to pay 5 over off the side here. We'll put them over there. 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then NASA gets 1 because there was a boost due to their faction privilege. All right. Then the person says, great, I'm going to go ahead and create that rocket stack with this Robonaut and with this refinery, because remember that Robonaut has a thruster on it. Not going to take the crew again because the glory chit has already been taken. Why take a crew at this point? Unless you're protecting your claim from felonies. But we saw how that went when there was no crew up there. NASA did not have a crew, and therefore their claim was stolen. One of their claims. They have 2 more out there with the white chits out there. You can see those white ones. All right, so the rocket stack has been created without the crew, and the dry mass chit is 5. And we know that because we just boosted it up there, and it was 5 mass. So the dry one's on 5. And they then use a cargo transfer to fuel the rocket, consuming their remaining 4 aquas. All the aquas now are gone, and that places the wet mass on 9. All right. However, that's still not enough fuel to go to Mars, because if you recall, it was 3 burns, 3 times 4, which is what their thruster is at. It's 4. It's on the Robonaut. Takes 4 fuel stops in order to do one burn. So 4 times 3 equals 12, and you can see by these intervals that's 3, 5, 7, 9, but they need 12. So they need 11, 13. They need to go to 11. That's where they were last time. So they need 2 more aquas in order to be able to get there. All right. So that's going to finish up that year. And we're going to go to year number 21. Year number 21 starts off with the Taikonauts. And excuse me. And the Taikonauts is going to, they're going to take an income operation to get that 4th aqua in order to to have a future failure is not an option payment. Because right now, as you can see, they only have 3 aqua. So they're going to do an income operation, and they're not going to take any chances about getting those people back home. So that was their operation. And now they're going to go ahead and we're going to go over here because they're going to move their rocket. All right, that's looking good. So now they're going to go ahead and they're going to switch over to their thruster from their crew, because this is a different term. So they're going to switch to this thruster. And so we're going to have to recompute the thrust on this, right? So the base thrust is 3, and there is a sun icon on there. And in the Mars zone, you'll see over here, it says, whoa, it's way up there. Mars, sun, -1. So they have a -1 from their base of 3, which brings it down to 2. And it is a probe class. That's the weight class of the rocket. Remember, it's very light. So they're going to get +1 for that. So the actual net thrust is the same as the base thrust, 3 -1 +1. They have 3. So they can do 3 burns. All right. So the Moth's thruster's fuel consumption is 4. So they leave low Mars orbit, and they do a burn to reach L1. Here's the burn. They reach L1. And then another burn before passing over the bridge. Here's the burn. And then they're going to pass over the bridge. All right, so we crossed over the bridge, and there was eight stops of fuel because they made 4 burns. So I'm going to do that over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that basically puts it down to 1 1/3. And from there, we're going to go ahead and keep on going. And we're going to go past this radiation because the radiation doesn't really matter. That's not anything that's bad. So we're gonna go to the Earth flyby, which is this spot right there on Earth itself, but it's actually flying by, and you get 2 bonus burns. So they're gonna get 2 more bonus burns, but they only need 1. So now the rocket's wet mass is still 1 1/3. No more burns are required because he gained 2 bonus burns in the Earth flyby to reach the cycler, and it's very easy to reach the cycler from there. Okay, so there is a dotted path right here that goes from Earth flyby up to the cycler, but there is a aero brake hazard roll right there. That's an aero brake hazard roll. So instead of what they're really trying to do is not speed up to go around the Earth. They're trying to slow down. So they want to use the aero braking, and they're going to pay all of their 4 aqua in order to do the failure is not an option move. And that basically brings them up to the cycler. And from the cycler, they're going to go to Leo. So they absolutely made it back. And everybody is happy on the Taikonaut side because they got 2 victory points now. And I'll show you. The chit is going to actually turn over because they're going to have a celebration because the first humans that landed on Mars came back. So there's your glory. The glory chit is for the Taikonauts, and they're going to get 2 points at the end of the game for doing that. All right, so that's that was pretty exciting. We learned some things there. We did the Earth flyby for the very first time, which was interesting, and yeah, that was pretty good. So now we got to have NASA and the ESA are going to attempt to get to Mars as quickly as possible so that they can get their factories up to try to get some more points. Because right now, with those 2 points, that's pretty good. And they also have that claim out there, which is also worth a point at the end of the game. NASA has 2 points out there, plus that outpost. I think the outpost counts. So I think they've got 3 points as well. And the rocket actually counts as another point as well for the Taikonauts. So I think the Taikonauts are actually winning at this point. All right. So NASA is going to free market the electroforming refinery for 3. Here's the refinery. They don't need that. So they're going to go ahead and just sell that. And they're going to get 3 aqua for selling that patent. That brings them back up to 5. Okay. The ESA is going to free market the thruster here. So that one goes back into the pile. And right here. And they're going to get 3 aqua for selling that patent. And that's their 3 right there. Oh, one just went away. All right, so it's back. And we got ourselves the 3 aqua. So what they're going to do is they're going to put it into their rocket, of course, because they've got a rocket stack already, and they already have some aqua in there. So they're going to go ahead and they're going to immediately take those 3 aqua and transfer them into fuel tanks. 1, 2, 3. You see that went up there. The red line is where we go. Now we're just going up one at a time. You see that? So once it gets heavier, you're going to be using more propellant for each of those burns. Okay. That is we're on 12 now with that wet mass, and that is going to end year number 21. So back over to the sundial here, sunspot cycle, year 22. Year 22 starts off with the Taikonauts, and the Taikonauts they're very satisfied. However, they also think that it's possible that they're not going to win, because if they get out there and start building factories and stuff, that's a lot of points. Factories are scored using this over here. Okay, so if you have the only S-type factory or C-type factory or H-type factory, you're going to get 8 points. If 2 people have factories out there, they each get 5 points for their factories. So that's a lot of points comparatively, since I believe that they only have 4 points at this time. So they're satisfied. However, they're going to try to do another mission to Mars and try to build a factory. But that requires getting a robonaut and a refinery there. And that's going to take funds and time. So what they do is they take an income and get one. So they're on their way to trying to get they're on their way to try to get something going. Okay, NASA also needs more money to get back to Mars. So it takes an income operation for an Aqua. And the person doesn't want to free market anything in their hand at this point, this Robonaut, because what they want to do is they want to turn it into this. It's a C Robonaut, and so they want to turn that thing into a ET produce it. So yes, ET production operation that will come in handy because they could sell that for a lot of Aqua. I believe it's 8 instead of the 3 that you get for the white one. Or I think they also get points at the end of the game as well for having that. Okay. However, the ESA has a different strategy. They're going to go ahead and sell this to the free market. So they did that, and they have three more Aqua, and they immediately transfer that into they use 2 of them. They use 2 of them, so there's only 1 here left, and then we move the wet mass up by 2 along the red line, so they're up to 14. And that's enough for 4 full burns because their rocket is sitting at a 4 here. So that's how many steps it uses for each burn. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, it looks like that's enough for 5 burns, but it says 4 in here, so we'll see. The ESA rocket has a base thrust of 5 right there. A base thrust of 5. It's a pushable, so they actually get 1 more because of their faction privilege, which is on this card right there. And it's a power sat. You get +1 for any pushable. It's a transport class rocket. You'll see here, -1 net thrust. Okay, so -1 net thrust will take it back down to a 5. And what they're going to do is they're going to take that exact same path as they took last time. All right, so let's go over here. We'll go a little bit right there. That looks pretty good. All right, so they got themselves a rocket. They're on Leo, along with the Taikonauts. So they're both on Leo. I guess I can move it just slightly more. There we go. All right, so they're on Leo right now, and they're going to go ahead and they're going to take off. So they're going to take off and go down the blue path. So here's the burns. 1 burn at the cycler. 1 burn at the Geo. Down to the Lagrange point. That's not a burn. So far they burned, and they've got they have what, 8 steps down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they're at 8.5. And then They're going to burn after the L2, which is right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, it is going to be exactly 4 burns. We're already down to there. There's the wet mass. So not much left. All right. We're going to get over there to Mars. There we go. All right. So we burned 3 times. And now they're going to go ahead and where the wet mass is now at 6.5. They're going to take the arrow brake path. This gives you 1 free burn. They take the arrow brake path here and they roll a 5 so they don't blow up. So that's good. Here's their free burn. They go into Mars, low Mars orbit. And then they're going to take the arrow brake path to the North Pole, which is here. Sorry, which is here. That's the North Pole over there, because they already there's an outpost there, which means that they're. I believe that means that there are people there, so you can't make a felony there because there are people at the outpost. So. Although I don't think there are people there at that outpost because the person didn't bring a crew. It's just a robonaut. So the robonaut's there. I'm not sure. Maybe they thought they couldn't, but I believe that you can steal that claim there. So if you know in the chat, go in the comment section, please let me know if you can or can't. I think that you can. If you have that privilege, you can commit that felony and steal a claim from a site that has an outpost that doesn't have a crew there. All right. But they're going to go ahead and take the arrow brake path here to the North Pole. All right. So instead of going into low Mars, they went to low Mars orbit, but then they took a right turn, and they're going to go down. They're going to try to get to the North Pole. So they went to that section, and they could stop the rocket and a wait to pay for the failure is no option, but instead they went ahead and did it, and they rolled, and they got themselves a 6. And they got they're able to get to the North Pole. I'm going to take a closer look at this and see exactly what's going on there. So this is not the path, by the way. So when they went here, they didn't go into low Mars orbit. They went this way. And this right here is the polar insert. So they're going to go to the polar insert. And there it was a burn. And that was their free burn. So then they went to this spot here, which is polar orbit. And then here was the parachute down move that they rolled a 6 on, and they were able to get to this site. So they were able to land on Mars and get to that site effectively, which was good. They rolled a 5 and a 6. And now all of a sudden has kind of changed because now they have a robonaut and a refinery there. So if they're able to claim that site, they're going to be able to build a factory. All right, so back to the other factions, and we're going to go ahead and go to year number 23. And year number 23 starts off with the Taikonauts going, and of course they're still on their mission to try to get back to Mars, and they're needing cash. So what they do is they auction off the Robonaut, because they also need a Robonaut as well. And it is a neutral beam Robonaut with a 5 mass and a 2 ray gun. So they go ahead and they auction that one off. And the ESA sees an opportunity and tries to get on the auction by bidding their one remaining Aqua. NASA, seeing what's going on, and what is basically going on is ESA is going to need to negotiate for that felony, right? For the privilege of getting that felony. So if the ESA gets that for one Aqua, then ESA can say, hey, I'll give you this Robonaut if you let me steal this claim. And sure enough, that will probably happen. So NASA doesn't want their claim to be stolen. So what NASA does is it says, great, I will go ahead and I'll bid 2. Well, guess what? Neither one of those other factions have more than one Aqua. One. So NASA is going to go ahead and win it, and they're going to take their 2 Aqua and gladly give that over for the Taikonauts. Holy cow. That one Aqua went flying away. It's all the way up there on the player aid that I really haven't used, although it's a really kind of a cool player aid. It's above this. It's right up there. It's really nice, but I haven't had to use it because I'm just kind of going through this tutorial and reading what they're doing. Although I am understanding it, I don't really have to use that player aid. I might refer to it in the future. So we'll see. But basically, NASA just gave 2 Aquas to the Taikonauts, and also received this Robonaut into their hand because they outbid everybody. The phase lock diode laser Robonaut is a spectral C card, which makes it valuable in terms of victory points, and that's why the ESA wanted it. The late game auction might very well be the deciding factor. It's one of those cases where the auction is focused on preventing another player from securing a valuable card. Now NASA has 2 spectral type C cards in their possession, and ESA has none. So that's I guess spectral type C is important. Here it is, the phase locked diode laser. That one right there is what I was looking for, and that one actually fell on the ground. So that's the reason why. That's what they put up for grabs, and they took it, and it is a C type. So apparently C types are good, mainly because Mars is a C type all over the place there. So it's possible that that's the reason why in this game those are worth something. So we'll wait and see until the final scoring, but that's the reason why they took it, to basically get in-game points. I thought the ESA was doing it in order to negotiate that claim, but we'll see. All right. Anyway, NASA got it, and NASA has 2 spectral type C cards in their possession, and the ESA has no cards in their possession, and so no C cards at least. So the cost of those 2 Aquas really didn't really matter to NASA because they're getting points at the end of the game. So 2 Aquas for one, if it's 1 point, that's worth it. All right, so NASA's up next, and NASA is committing to returning to Mars this turn. but they know that it's going to take them 2 turns to get there unless they decide to take some risks. And that's not really in their nature. As you know, they paid for the failure is not an option last time, and they actually made it onto the surface of Mars. So they really don't like taking risks. So they're going to go ahead and take a cargo transfer free action to turn their LEO stack into a rocket, this time, though, with the crew. So let's take a look at their playmat. They're going to go ahead and they're going to take that Robonaut over here. So they got themselves a thruster, a refinery. I'm sorry, this Robonaut's on the outpost. Never mind. They're going to take everything from LEO and they're going to put it on their rocket stack, including the crew. So they have a refinery, a thruster, and the crew. And so we have to add up all the mass. 5, 3, and 1. That's a 9. So the dry mass here goes to the number 9. And the rocket goes onto the board over on LEO, where the white rocket is, next to the purple rocket on LEO. All right, so they have a dry mass of 9. And another cargo transfer is going to convert 2 of the aqua to fuel. So 2 aqua go away, and the wet mass goes up by 2. So 1, 2, following the red dotted line. So they're at wet mass of 11, dry mass of 9. And the rocket is in the transport weight class. I'll get that a little closer so you can see that. Transport weight class is -1 net thrust. The base thrust of the rocket is 5, as we can see right there. So the base thrust is 5. The transport weight brings it down to a thrust of 4. So we're at 4. And there is a there is an afterburn option to basically spend 1 step of fuel in order to get 1 extra thrust, but they choose to not afterburn, so the final net thrust is going to be 4. Now the rocket can move with a net thrust of 4, so it can undertake up to 4 burns. They're going to take the red route to Mars. So let's get on that path. And by the way, they do have enough to make 4 burns. 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's only 1 per burn. So let's go back over here and let's travel from the Earth to Mars again, using this time the red path. So we'll just count this thing around. We'll go 1 burn here to the cycler through the radiation that doesn't matter in this game, onto Geo for the second burn, past the Lagrange point here for 2 more burns. And let's see if they make that pivot with 2 burns. I'm going to read this and see. The rocket goes through Geo, goes through L2, and then stops the Hohmann. Okay, so they're actually going to stop right there. They're not going to take those 2 extra burns. I made 2 burns, so they go 1, 2, down to 10. That's right over there. And they still have enough to do 2 left. Okay, so they're going to stick out the Hohmann, and at the next turn, they're going to be able to take that red line and go to Mars in 2 turns rather than 1, because I believe it took them 5 burns last time to get there in 1 turn. Okay, sounds good. So that's where they're at, and they're at the Hohmann, and they couldn't have really gone any further because if they did, they would have ran out of fuel. So, looking ahead at their next turn, NASA knows that once she reaches low Mars orbit, she won't have enough funds to safely traverse the aerobrake path down to her claim site on Arsia Mons Caves, meaning she would have to roll for the hazard. To gain those funds, she free markets the newly obtained phase-locked diode laser Robonaut, gaining 3 aquas. So remember, they didn't take any kind of operation. All they did was move. So now they're going to do their operation, and that Robonaut that they just took, that they wanted to use for points at the end of the game, they're not going to be able to do that. So they go ahead and they sell it, and they get 3 aqua. Now they have enough aqua to be able to purchase the failure is not an option move for 4. Okay. Now, the ESA, guess what they're going to do? That's right, negotiate. They've got to get claim to that site up there that the green rocket is sitting on, way up there. That white site is NASA's site, and there's no crew there. So they need to commit a felony in order to take that site. And the only people that have a felony faction privilege are the Taikonauts, and the Taikonauts need to allow that to happen and give the ESA the ability to do that. So what they do is they negotiate, and they say, okay, well, the only way that I'm going to be able to do anything is if I get that claim on the North Pole. And you said you weren't going to go there in the previous negotiation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get that. And so will you help me? The Taikonauts at this point know that they're not going to win. They have no way. They don't have any way. They don't even have a Robonaut. They don't even have a refinery. There's no way they're going to be able to win. So what they do is they say, okay, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and say, if you give me 1 aqua, then you can go ahead and do it. And they say, okay, great. There's the aqua. So 1 aqua goes over to the Taikonauts. And the next thing you know, a felony is committed. The second felony on Mars, at the North Pole of Mars. It was a white claim, and now the Europeans have it. So NASA's claim is gone. All right. So now everybody's got a claim out there now on Mars, which is nice. But it did take 2 felonies to get there. So now, since they negotiated that, Player Green still has not taken an operation. They can immediately industrialize the site. So what they do is they take an industrialized operation. And what they need is a Robonaut and a refinery co-located with their claim. And guess what? In that rocket stack, she has a Robonaut and a refinery. So that is going to work out, and that's going to use the industrialized operation to build the factory on the North Pole, and decommissioning both of these to her hand. It is a seaside factory. These cubes right here do not come with the game. They do not come with the game with their letter on them. So just like that, there is no rocket. So the rocket's removed, and the factory is actually put on the claim site. That C cube that has the letter C on it and the other letters is actually an extra packet that you can get to get those. Otherwise, they're just these regular looking cubes here. I like those. Those are bigger and they have the letters on them. So they're kind of cool. Okay. So they got themselves a factory now. And so what we have to do is on the exploitation track, we have to move the position on this C site, C factory thing over here. We got to move it. And this is C from 10 to 8. So it's worth 8 points. If no one else builds a factory there, that person's got themselves 8 points. And that's pretty good. So, yeah. I just messed up all these cards. I'm going to go ahead and clean that up a little bit. There we go. Great. Okay. So they got themselves a factory that's worth 8 points right now. And they're hoping that nobody else can build a factory out there. So only one factory can exist on any given site. And the spectral type of the factory becomes the spectral type of the site that it's on. So since it was a C site, it's a C factory. So the factions are all trying for some victory points. It's year number 24. The Taikonauts don't expect to win, but they auction the neutral beam Robonaut because they need a Robonaut. So they go ahead and they auction that off. And if I'm going to guess, nobody bid on it. Let's see. Yep. They win the patent for 0. And that's all she wrote. They do have a couple of tips in here. They said, take winning risks. A strategy with a slight degree of risk is more likely to be successful. And, you know, that does make sense because if you consider this, the odds of rolling a 1 is 1 in 6, right? So that's a little bit less than 17% of the time you're going to roll a 1. So, you know, I think that probably is a pretty good risk that you're not going to roll that 1. You're going to roll a 1, only 1 out of 6, and you're not going to roll a 1 5 out of 6 times. So, you know, I think that's probably a pretty good risk to take. Anyway, that's what they're basically tipping. So there's also a note. It says, thematically, decommissioning represents everything from repurposing technology to building a factory on another world to losing your hardware in a mishap. But ideas never die, and so patent cards go back into your hand to be sold in the free market or used again, and the crew card returns to LEO, representing another crew ready to go. So the crew actually wasn't even used by them. It's always sitting at LEO because they had that Robonaut that had a thruster. So they were able to get there. Now there was a problem here though, and I want to mention this because I was mentioning something about could they do a claim jump on the site with the outpost? Well, actually, they couldn't do a claim jump at all because they had no crew, but they did it anyway. So that was a mistake that was made in this game. They shouldn't have been able to claim that site because they didn't bring their crew. Just FYI on that. However, they probably thought that was okay because they could have just put the crew over there it would have increased the mass by 1, and I don't think that would have changed anything. So I think that's probably why they thought, well, so they just forgot to bring their crew. They should have brought it. You cannot do a claim jump unless you have a crew. So that's just an FYI. All right. So anyway, we had the CRP. There's also one more note here in regards to a polar orbit. So a polar orbit allows an orbiting body to travel over the poles of a planetary body rather than around the equator. Entering a polar orbit from an equatorial orbit, such as LMO, requires a lot of energy. The delta V to undergo a direct inclination change, delta I, from one circular orbit to another while maintaining the same orbital speed. So to go from the equatorial LMO of an inclination of 0 to a polar orbit around Mars, which is an inclination of 66 degrees, requires a delta V of 2 times 3.5 times the sine of 33 degrees, or approximately 3.8 kilometers per second, about 1.5 burns in high frontier. So there you have it. That's why it took a lot to basically get over into that polar orbit. And that's an interesting fact. All right. Very good. So we're going to call that here. Next time, I believe that we're probably going to finish up this game. So I hope you enjoyed this one, this episode. And it looks like episode 6 is going to be the last part for the Race to Glory, the Mars tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in the next one.